Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, there we are.
I can see you. Patricia.
I'm coming. Hello.
Hi, darling. Q's coming. She said there was something wrong with her camera.
Wow, I just got up from a nap. I am rough.
Well, I'm in like vacation mode, so I'm just like I've been outside all day. Like, woo.
Love that.
Yes. Oh, I still have my music on. Hold on. All right. Okay. I'm gonna give Q a few more minutes and we can just see how everybody's doing today.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so while we're waiting for Q, how are you guys doing today? How's today feel?
I actually felt a lot of peace today, which is surprising and really great. I wasn't expecting myself to, I don't know, kind of get myself back out there. And it's not really about that, but just like having fun, I guess. And I ended up on a really, really amazing date last night. And it was so filling in ways that I haven't felt in a long time. And I was like, wow, I really needed that. So it was really good, but brought me back to, tapping into things that I inherently love about myself. And like, I just came to a lot more peace with myself. And so I'm feeling pretty good today. And it was, I don't know. So I'm good.
That's amazing. I love the way that you ended that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an interesting transit today. Venus is squaring Uranus. Venus being the planet of relationships and values and things like that, and Uranus being, sudden changes and surprises and upheaval and things like that. So I was curious.
That is interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Manifested in anybody's day in a particular way. Yes. What about you, Raina? How you doing?
Hey. Honestly, it was a pretty simple Sunday. I like Sundays to be really nothing going on unless all of a sudden I want to do something. So
I feel that.
I keep Sundays pretty much empty. No, I have a lot of anticipation for this week, like the feeling of it. I'm not really doing anything particular. I know I have some work stuff tomorrow. I need to just square up a bit, which I'm like, ugh, but yeah, I have a lot of feelings of anticipation for this upcoming week, which is sort of interesting. Not anxious, just it's just anticipation. There's no other word for it.
Yeah.
So I sort of been feeling that today, just this sense of needing to be doing something all day, even though I didn't really have anything to do, but I felt like I needed to do this week coming up. So, which is not my norm. My norm is much more like a rest state. So yeah, we'll see what the week looks like.
We will. I'm gonna be looking forward to next week's class whenever I ask everyone how they're doing and how their week went. And you're like, I went skydiving. And I did my taxes while I did it. So yeah, don't worry. All right, you guys. I hope I'm gonna peek at my phone real quick just to make sure Q didn't give me another update. I'd rather not start without her, but
I'm gonna finish my cake.
perfect. It is cake o'clock.
It is. It's Sunday. Sunday is my sweet day. I love it.
Okay. Nothing. Oh, there we go. Perfect timing. Hi, darling.
Ah, cute here.
My camera's not acting right, so you guys are not gonna be able
Aw,
to see me. It sucks.
that's okay. Voice from nowhere. How
What
are
up,
you doing
P?
today?
Hey, Raina.
Yeah, hey.
Hello. No,
We're
why
all
can't we
here
see
together.
you?
You're looking
Hello.
radiant as ever, Raina. So
Thank
Thank
annoying.
you. It's my new sweaty look. I think I'm carrying it well.
Oh, it's working.
You know what? Fuck this. I'm gonna turn on my phone. It's gonna be ghetto, but I'm gonna just do it on my phone.
Yeah, we would love to see even your very pixelated face.
Yeah, I can't do this. So rude. How was your week, everybody?
That's what we were just talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was well, we're not gonna rehash that, okay? I'll catch up later.
Well, how was your day, Q? How are you and where are you today?
I I just came back from Greenville. I had some oh that's not gonna work.
Oh, wow, wow, wow.
Hi.
Hi,
All
there
right.
she is. Lovely.
I had some business to tend to. I tended to it. Got home enough time, ate my salad. I'm ready to rock.
I like it. Concise. All right, guys. So here we are, 7:12 p.m. And so I have a question for Trish. Did you have time to review the last class?
I didn't
Okay,
know.
that's okay.
Yeah.
That is okay. So I just want to, in hyperspeed, say just a couple of things to be noted moving forward. One of the things is that, like I was telling everyone last week, what makes this course unique and also one of the larger mechanisms of it or how it functions is that it's very specifically tailor-made to the people in it. And so what I mean by that is that as we get further into the course, especially after week 4, I have deliberately left certain aspects of this course unfilled in.
Open. Yeah.
Okay, to be filled in by the information that's provided by the people who participate in it. With that being said, last week we spent some time at the end of that class and we talked about essentially what multidimensionality means to us, but also Q and Raina shared just a kind of off the cuff, very ambling and free form ideations about, what they desire in life, what attracts them, to this course and what attracts them into essentially you guys didn't say this, but I kind of took it as the next phase and the next chapter of life, like what's pulling you forward. And so the way I've designed it is so that week 1 through 3 is much lighter. It's mainly the lecture, and then there is it's a guided meditation, but I was saying before, I'm really not partial to guided meditations, but this one is something wholly other, in my opinion. And we're going to be doing it over and over again. So it will kind of become a staple of the class. So we'll do that for the first time today. And But then on week 4, things are going to change pretty drastically. And more of the experiential and activity-based portions of the lecture are going to come into effect, like what you probably saw on social media with the aura, ordinary radical acts, and indwelling art, but that's kind of later. So final word on logistics is that the Q&A part that's going to be at the end, but also that Telegram chat, use that to the fullest. You know, I was saying last time, I think of it almost like having me in your pocket. Like, I will give you my absolute best, not just, you know, in the Q&A here, but also whatever you want to put forth in the Telegram chat. So there's oh, well, thank you, darling. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I'm here, man. I love y'all. I'm here on vacation. I'm here up in this motherfucking room on vacation. You know, I love y'all. All right. If you didn't know. But that's one more thing I was gonna say. Oh yeah, you know, you get what you put in. That's it. That's the concise version. Okay. So today we're gonna be talking about purpose mainly, which is, I mean, don't we all want to know more about that? And to come full circle, what I really seek to accomplish by the end of this lecture is to first and foremost clear up some misconceptions about purpose that are huge, so you never have to wonder about the big aspects where it's concerned. But also I want to triangulate the concept of a human being's purpose specifically with the functionality of play and multidimensionality. So how those all go together. And everybody get real comfortable. All right. So first off, I'm going to tell you plain and simple, real simple here. To live as a multidimensional being is first and foremost, and most importantly, means to take control of your energy. And that is probably something that has crossed your mind before, but we're going to take it up a notch today. So you will not be able to do this every moment of every day of your life, but you can think of it kind of like a painting. When you are in a museum and you behold a beautiful painting or a work of art, but let's use a painting for this example. Do you immediately take in every single brush stroke in that painting? Or are you taking in the whole conception at large? Because if your eye sometimes falls on this corner or this stroke or this color, right? And if you took the time to focus in and investigate each one of those things that your vision sort of was drawn to, you would only be able to take those in one at a time. This is key. And they would never, ever in their life make as much sense, nor would they have as great of an impact as what you felt when you looked at the whole picture. So that's a really convoluted metaphor or analogy for what I mean by no. Of course, you will not be able to achieve this exalted state of perception that I'm going to do my best to initiate you into over these 9 weeks, every single moment of your life. But just like the brush strokes, they add up over time to the point where the line between what you perceive, and especially what you once perceived as ordinary life, and experiences every day, or rather in the everyday, that are like stepping stones and that are more magnanimous, and that you can perceive, you can see very clearly, more and more clearly, how they are on the footpath to your purpose. That line starts to blur, where the frequency starts to increase. Whereas before, for a person, for example, might have a moment, every so often, maybe even once a year, where they feel very connected to what it is that they want to do with their life. But if you could imagine that happening at least once a day or every few hours, and feeling that feeling, being immersed in it more and more and more completely, that to me is one brushstroke of what it feels like to live as a multidimensional being. This is how I am personally describing not only my own experience, but I'm sort of piggybacking and borrowing the ways that, occultists and spiritual investigators, and however you want to reckon with those terms, have described it in so many words. Poets as a catch-all term for these people. And this is the kind of experience that, more than anything, I want to not only talk about and show as possible, but I want to describe and share, right? So in short, what I'm saying to you is that life is unbelievably complex. And, in the work of Steiner, he has this concept called the devil of unity. And what he means by that is there's this kind of trap that people and everybody, it's a unanimous sort of experience when you start to enter in to spirituality and esoteric subjects, when you start to want to understand more about how life works. This thing happens, and it happens to all of us, which is that we think that if we just keep going deeper and deeper, we're going to find more and more simplified answers. That it's going to get more and more simple and boiled down to a point, right? Where another way to look at this is a kind of schematism, like a schema. And this shows up in the relationship that we have today with science, which is more like scientism, meaning that there's something to be said about the places that we brush up against in our own minds, but also in the larger system of science today, where there's a point where we go, I don't know, or I can't know. And this is the devil of unity, where we're all agreeing to some degree that this is unknowable, or this is so knowable that it's simple, right? And so what multidimensionality is, which again, we're kind of marrying all of this lecture material right alongside with anthroposophy, because this is all anthroposophical material. And the mission overall of anthroposophy is to engender and invoke and to teach human beings how to understand the full weight, how to carry that recognition in their body of what truth is. And so what I'm saying is, your life is unbelievably complex. Relax into that. Your life is unbelievably ordered, as a matter of fact. And you can relax into that, because I don't tell you what's your other option? Because you're no match for life, So I keep emphasizing this point about things actually getting more and more complex instead of simple, because I want to prepare you for some of this material that is going to start next week, which is a lot less of explanation and more just pure teaching by the book from a very scientific perspective, and it's unbelievably complex. So it is true to some degree, following what I just said, that to enter into this kind of experience of life that I've described to you earlier, there are some secrets. That's what esoteric means, you know, and we don't quite have time today to go down the thread of why they were secret and those kinds of things, but secrets that must be exchanged between people who are ready to hear them. And I am telling you with full confidence that you wouldn't be here if you weren't. But then after that, to take it further, you have to take up the mantle of esoteric study yourself, and to progress further becomes more than anything a solitary journey. Preface, but really important. So if you were born, you're born and your name is Raina and Q or Q, and you're in this Zoom call, then you already know from my last my last lecture series, that we can only perceive that which we are. That's something that we talked about a bit before, okay? Now, what does this have to do with purpose, though? A lot of this, we can only perceive that which we are. There's dimensions, there's levels to this. It can funnel down into having the kind of life that we want, being the kind of person that we want to be. But in truth, it really doesn't stop there, or at least doesn't have to. So if you're interested in something beyond this kind of create your own reality or create your character kind of mentality, that is, I'm overjoyed at the fact that these kinds of concepts are coming into the mainstream, but they are a bit profaned. By that I mean to say they're stunted in their initiatory qualities, right? Because if you go a bit further than just create your own reality or create the person that you want to be, right? And by way of doing that, fulfilling your purpose, you're going to bump up against something that, if you don't have any esoteric understanding from a traditional sense, you're not going to really have the ability to understand what's happening to you. And that's essentially that the reality is that when we start to get the things that we want, if it is not, and this sounds really simple, but if it's not in alignment, we'll say, with the truth of who we really are and what we truly desire, it will not be sustainable. It will cause inevitably more and more iterations and versions and various degrees of intensity of inner and outer conflict. And that's kind of the potential pitfall, and where's the danger of going into purpose like a create your own reality kind of situation. But there is a paradox to this, because it is truthful. And here's the paradox. And here's the first thing that I want to clear up once and for all about life purpose, right? It's this. A human being's life is purposeful to the degree that that human being gives it purpose. We are not born with a set track of things that we are supposed to do that are inevitable. Herein lies another paradox. Karma is also real. But see, this is what I'm telling you. It's not going to get more and more simple. It's going to get more and more complex. So we're going to keep talking about purpose and explain more about what I just said about how it's self-given. And we're going to understand this from a more complex perspective when we get to the lecture about karma. And we can see how these things work together as a paradoxical, dichotomous truth occurring simultaneously, but seeming to contradict each other. But the main thing is that I just want to set right on the shelf right now is that your purpose is literally what you determine it to be. That's what it is. That's the spiritual utility or mechanism behind it. That's the only way that it would be divine to the degree that it reflects what we are as human beings, which are 10th order angels. Back to reality for a moment. You do not become more multidimensional by putting a bunch of things on your plate. That is not what I mean by complexity, although it is very much about being able to hold more things than you're accustomed to. But that can very much just mean depth. Another way, we're going to just talk about multidimensionality a little bit more to understand what I'm meaning by this is to really to lean into the mechanism or the essence of things. And we talk about this a bit in intuition as a way of life. Lean into order first, and let the details expand. So I'm quite literally saying, when you see a tree, try this sometime. When you see a tree, I want you to stand in front of that tree or look out your window or whatever. And I want you to just look at that tree and keep saying the word tree over and over and over and over and over, because that's the order, that's the fact, right? We call that a tree in the English language, right? But if you keep doing that, have you ever noticed that? You say a word too many times, it starts sounding weird. You ever wondered why that is? Well, the thing is that, think about it like this. And this is kind of, you'll see how this relates to play and who we were as children. When we were children, we looked at that thing that we did not know was a tree before, and we had all kinds of impressions about it. It made us feel all kinds of things. It brought us into contact with all kinds of different beings and consciousness, and it inspired us in ways that we cannot even recall. And then we learned it was a tree. And all of that in the spirit of unity, or the devil of unity, the necessary evil of schematism collapsed into a single point, which we know as tree, right? But as with the adage, as above, so below, if you lean into the order of the things that are occurring in your life first, by that I mean the cold, hard facts, if you were honest enough to look at them, to pare away the details, right? But you can practice this first with nature because it's the most neutral for a lot of people, I would say, object in their life, right? So you look at this tree and you keep saying tree, tree, tree over and over again. And then you utilize that common sense, that Steinerian common sense, which is more than anything about listening. What is it? It's going to be very subtle, almost a whisper. Might not happen the first 10 times you do it, but you will eventually start to reconnect with that ability that you had as a child, which is a super sensible kind of perception that is always there. Doesn't matter if you're clairvoyant or not. The only difference between people who are clairvoyant is that they can see it, essentially. But you will start to, usually, going back to this painting analogy, you'll start to pay more attention to something about this schematic object, Will it be the shape of the leaves? Will it be the color? What will it be? It could be something beyond both of those. But this is the kind of very real soul life practice over theory that Steiner is talking about. These are the ways that are always accessible for you to experience these kinds of altered states of consciousness for yourself. Because the more of these experiences you have, not all of them, of course, will be self-willed, but in the beginning, they must be. They add up, and then they start essentially happening on your behalf. Furthermore, so much of multidimensionality is essentially realizing that you can relate or respond to things that you don't identify with. And this is big, bigger than these words coming out of my mouth can ever convey. Because it begs the question again and again, as much as you'll let it, what are we identifying with? And how much am I relegating my response and my relationship in my everyday life to only the things that I identify with? It's a good way to be less dimensional than you have the capacity to be. So, living as a multidimensional being will not suddenly make your life more exciting. Because I just said, you go outside and you just say tree a lot, and that might not be exciting. It won't suddenly make your life more exciting. It's a caveat there. It won't take the natural ebb and flow of your life away. It will not take away your PMS symptoms, but in my experience, it will greatly reduce them over time. What it will do, interestingly enough, though, is that it will provide more neutrality in your life, which is why I gave this example of the tree. And neutrality doesn't sound like the easiest sell. I know. But the thing is, the more neutrality that you're able to accrue, we'll put it like that, comfortably hold, embody, the more that you are in the seat in the control room of your life. And the more that when things start to get a little bit trippy in regards to how much control you actually do have over your experience in life, the more that you will be able to handle that in a calm, neutral place and not freak out a little bit. So you've got to essentially, you have to build up that neutrality first. Otherwise, your nervous system is not going to be able to withstand these multidimensional capacities and experiences and abilities to perceive and interact with life that you have as a birthright. You have got to build up that neutrality in your being, in your field. You've got to saturate yourself with it. And again, one of the best ways to do that is to look at the order, be squarely honest about the bare bones, the facts of what is happening in your life, to the point where when you wake up, you say, I'm opening my eyes. That is the truth before anything else. I am touching the floor. How often are you engaging in this kind of thinking? Because that is what is required for these experiences that I'm trying to talk about, right? So what does multidimensionality mean to me? And I promise all this will relate to purpose, but you've got to build some things up first. So multidimensionality to me personally, it means three things. If I had to put it in 3 words, which I did right here on this paper. Momentum, movement, and access. And if I really think about it, those things could not be more important to me personally as a person. Which is another way of saying that when you, again, you lean more into the order of things and engage more with things that are neutral, that you don't necessarily identify with, what you do identify with and who you really are begins to show a lot clearer and with less strain and with less searching. You will find yourself essentially observing yourself almost a few seconds after the fact, behaving, appearing, connecting, having access to things that are of significant value and interest and attraction to you on a very deep level as a spiritual being, without you having to look for that first. That's where the rectification has to happen with multidimensionality, sure, but also with the concept of purpose. You see, people, when they start thinking about their purpose, it is so tempting to essentially not only start with, but only to think about what really, really makes them happy and what they identify with more than anything else. And to tell you the truth and to be a bit brutal about it, for people who are not ready to interface with more esoteric perspectives on that process, that's the best advice that you could give them. Because it is a blessing and a privilege that that we're all here being able to understand these concepts, because not everyone can. So you do what you can. You give them the best advice and the best shot possible. But we're going to talk about why, for those who are capable of thinking essentially completely outside of what in some ways everyone is telling you to do, and do the antithesis of that. Okay, so to bring home what multidimensionality means to me personally, it is the capacity to truly live, to mold life from the inside out, to take full responsibility for one's life, down to the minutia, especially the minutia, to own the experience you're having, to live an individual life, to be courageous enough to enter the dojo of self-trust and emerge feeling more connected to life and more connected to the world than you could have ever imagined, to live artfully, to create unique and personal pathways of communication to you on multiple planes of existence, to champion imagination as the hallmark of navigation, to prioritize intent over striving, to thrive in complexity, to take your motherfucking time, and to turn duty into play, right? Okay, so back to purpose. Now we've talked about multidimensionality enough. All right, cool. Doing pretty good on time. Okay, so this lecture is called Duty to Play on Purpose. And it's, it's supposed to be funny or something. But it's quite literal. So the purpose of turning duty into play is not merely about making your life or your work more fun, right? Although that is a natural consequence, right? It's more complex than that. Okay, so a person's work becomes play. Let's talk about what that really means. A person's work becomes play to the extent that his own initiative, his or her, we're going to use his here because I'm talking Steiner, his own initiative completely cancels external pressure. That's huge. And his love of action makes light of duty. Okay, so the art of life, essentially, no big deal, is transforming work into play. That's it. Sometimes it's that simple when you can say it out loud, but this means we should play the game, not in playing along, but in the sense of knowing the rules, which is what traditional esoterica gives to us, accepting them gladly, and then plunging into the sport for the joy that it gives. Under these circumstances, we can see that play develops a more complete sense of responsibility than work, because when we are playing, we say, I will. When we are working, we say, I must. So we know that when we think about play, that characterizes adulthood. That's what we did as children. But why do we not think of it as a signature of maturity? It was Jesus who literally said, except ye become again as little children, ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. Right? So, in other words, except in the spirit of play, man will not realize the divine in himself, find the divine in the world, in that order, or participate worthily in the divine act of creation. So that's how important this is. Let's talk about how important it is even more. Okay. All right. So essentially, the child at play, the mature human being who has risen to a childlikeness, is in the world, but not of the world. He's close enough to shape things, right? But free enough so that what he shapes is beholden more than anything to his own promptings. He is playing. He is playing. There were a few philosophers that really informed Steiner's, a lot of his lectures, of which there are many, and especially when it comes to his system of education, the Waldorf education that he created, that informed his perspective, of course. And one was Nietzsche. So just to really, really hit this nail on the head, Nietzsche said that man passes on his way to freedom through 3 stages. The camel that asks to be heavily laden with rules and plans and duties given by the world. The lion that fights against the world for his freedom. Raina, just kidding. I'm just kidding. And finally, the child who, in mastery of the world, possesses freedom and knows what to do with it, right? And then the other philosopher that I do want to mention, another Friedrich, not Nietzsche, but Friedrich Schiller, he literally said, man only plays when in the full meaning of the word he is a man, and he is only completely a man when he plays, right? So what does play do? What is this? Play transforms the logical faculty, necessary, we need that, right, into creative imagination. And play makes work that deadens into art that enlivens. The power of play, it mediates essentially inner life and outer life. So you can think about it like our heart, right? Our heart is what beats between the upper half of our body and the lower half of our body. Okay? So essentially, what play does is it mediates the inner life of thought and the outer world of action, right? So there's also to be noted this very popular misconception that, you know, if adults regarded life more like play, that they would be less responsible. But we just learned that play actually sets the stage for taking a more complete responsibility for one's life in another way. And so, you know, I don't want to explain it quite like I've written it here. Play is a more complete undertaking than work. This is what I really want to emphasize. Play uses all of our faculties, work only some of them, right? And in play, we ourselves are leading. So just think about the implications for a second. If you take away all the details, right? Because that's what we're going to get real good at in our lives, is take away all the details, such as how the person's playing, what they're playing with, how they're doing, the way in which they are playing, okay? And you just squarely say, this person, perhaps it's you, is playing. And if that can be true more often, that can be true once a week, whereas before it was true once a year, then that is a fact, right? Okay. Then that means that that person is more often, with more regularity, and getting better at leading themselves and their own life. The implications of that are exponential. What happens as a result of that is exponential, but you know what it requires? It requires what all things that will warrant a major life change require, and that requires risk. Great risk, actually, because you are in fact going against a motherfucking gigantic grain. I'm here to tell you it's worth it, though. Okay? So, all right. Let me go to this next portion here. How do we? All right. Not too much left here. All right. Okay. So, a lot of times what people do And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go on a laundry list of instances where this occurs, especially in spirituality and spiritual literature. You can probably think of some examples on your own. A lot of times what people do is mistakenly perceive a natural consequence as a goal. Like for I said, people are like, duty to play because I want life to be more fun. And that's not the goal. That's a natural consequence, right? Okay. So another one of these that's really huge is the lessening of pressure, right? So many people mistake turning duty into play and finding their purpose, living the life that they want, creating their own reality, all across the board. One of the main motivators, which whether or not they realize it, and a lot of times they don't, that they are seeing as the goal, the end all be all, is this great lessening of pressure. This is, how do I explain this? When these things happen, just like I opened with before, where there are these thresholds where whether it's a person or science, best way to illustrate it is with science, we come up against this place and we don't know how we could ever go any further. We say we can't know, or we don't know, so therefore we can't know, right? And if you've ever heard the phrase, through God all things are possible, or another one, you're never alone. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Why this is really true. One, we learned last time, which is we are the thoughts of greater beings in the hierarchy of the cosmos. We are thoughts thinking themselves. Again, I'm really going to make this very clear. It is not, do I have a spirit guide? How do I communicate with my spirit guide? You are the living thought of not just your spirit guide, but there is no separation. You're in the same body. Okay? But you also have the ability to sequester your perspective, right? Here we are, we're just a tree. All the other shit, I don't know. Right? We're just a tree. To sequester and to constrict your perspective, right? Down, 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 down into more unified and simplified points. The whole point is this lessening of pressure when you realize that you are not doing any of this alone. The evolution of the gods is literally happening through you, right? So the more that you allow your thoughts and your being to feel, how do I put this into words? This is a humdinger. I've never put this into words, so you're gonna have to give me a minute. When you are living in more and more conscious awareness of the beings that are literally, like, you can think about it like this, jumping into your thoughts. Think about all of your thoughts having this shell and different beings jump into them. When you realize that you are truly never alone, as in it's quite literally not possible. It is not possible for you to ever, ever, ever be alone. Okay? when you start to open up the aperture, then you receive a degree of what we describe in the literature as divine assistance than you would have ever imagined. And that is the consequence. That is what creates the less pressure. If you try to just do things from a pure material perspective, not understanding that, there's always going to be a cap on how less pressure you're going to feel in your life because you do not understand how the consequence works, the truth of it. You are still going to be trying to enact a lot of these things as if you are more alone than you really are. Essentially like being stopped at the threshold of a new stage of initiation. So your purpose is multifaceted and as precise as you. You are never going to be able to sum it up in words. Yes, that's true. There's no point in trying. Don't do it. How could you do it? I don't understand. Right? Okay. We've talked about here purpose is self-given. Your life's purpose is your life deeply lived. And I'm going to tell you something, and I hope this is honestly the only thing that you take away from all these things that I have just said. It's in your deeds, y'all. It is not in what you say you're going to do. It is only when you follow through and do it. It is only in what you actually do. Period. The more, if you want simple, I will make it simple. The more that you decide, I'm going to do this, and then you do it, knowing that you're not doing it alone, the more purposeful your life is, the more that you are living your purpose. But you have to do the work, whatever your work is. It is a law. You must know you have everything that you need at all times to evolve. That's the law. Okay? So everything that you need, that you require to develop your sense of self to a point that it is synonymous with a spiritual experience of life is with you at all times. That is the law. Will you feel it at all times? Will you be aware of it at all times? No. But those are only brush strokes. They add up, right? Okay. I must say this as a matter of ethics. The heights of spirit can only be climbed, which is a fancy way to say that you will not be granted access, ding ding access, into this relationship with who you really are. And I do mean that even on a scientific, physiognomical level. It will remain to you just a phrase that you heard some fucking lunatic say on Zoom that you're a thought thinking itself, okay? If, okay? you do not prioritize humility, but a very specific kind of humility. Okay. All right. So you can only acquire this kind of knowledge, and I don't mean knowledge like what I'm talking about to you, right? I mean knowledge that is directly coming from these beings in which you share a body, in which you wouldn't be here if they didn't exist. Okay. That kind of knowledge. Knowledge which has the ability to initiate people, right? You can only acquire that knowledge when you learn to esteem it, essentially. You've got to have a very clear understanding that it will not be given to people who do not respect it. It won't. That is also a law, because it would cause harm to them and potentially harm to other people, right? So again, you remember in the beginning when I said, there are these things I'm going to tell you. And then when we say bye-bye, you must go alone. Okay? So for every one step that you take in the pursuit of this knowledge and this relationship and this experience of multi-dimensional living, I want you to take 3 steps in the perfection of your own character. That's what it takes, right? Not perfection, just devotion to that, right? It's an inner modesty. You don't even have to come across as modest to anybody else. You can still do everything. You can be scandalous. It's an inner modesty, right? To the truth about reality, about what these beings are, right? It's a modesty that says we're not complete as human beings. We're still evolving. We still require education and knowledge and assistance from beings that are more evolved than us, because of which we have a life. That's what it is, right? And there's 2 last points that I want to make, and that will conclude the lecture portion. Okay, so this will probably be the most valuable thing that I have to say at this point in my life about purpose. And this is the whole little secret thing that I was talking about earlier, that you really can't tell everybody. And it goes a little something like this. The pyramids. Just kidding. No, I'm not kidding at all. So the pyramids are going to perish. Eventually, right? They can't last forever. But the ideas that gave birth to them will develop onwards. They will continue to be an inexhaustible resource, which is at its essence incorruptible and only has an infinity of evolution. The ideas which gave birth to those pyramids, which you can go and probably can't touch. I don't know. Q can tell us. I don't know if you can touch them. You can touch them. You can touch them. But one day, they won't be there to touch, right? The cathedral. These are the things I came up with to illustrate my point, right? The idea of a cathedral, one of the most iconic aspects of architecture that we have, right? But one day, it's going to take another form. What we think of as a cathedral will no longer look like a stone vagina. It'll look, I hope it still does. Raphael pictures right? Okay. Will one day fall into dust. But the ideas which his creations represent will be living powers forever. The art of today will be the nature of tomorrow. This is what I'm going to open with to explain to you the concept of involution versus evolution, right? While it is true that your purpose cannot be summed up in a sentence, it couldn't even be summed up in a book. However, there are, we can all agree, only so many means of a human being enacting the unreplicable beauty of their self-fashioned purpose through already established, though ever evolving, mediums. So, what do I mean by that? It is the new, and by that I mean essentially outside of time, like these ideas, right? Or thought soul content. The new thought soul content, which comes from human beings, that evolves the mediums. Okay. That inner unreplicable beauty, thought soul content, the details, is an anthroposophy called involution. Except Steiner doesn't necessarily liken it explicitly to purpose like I am, but either way, it is the involution that precipitates the evolution. It is the memories and the prophecies and the creations of the feminine impulse in us all that give life to what will eventually become the systems and the structures and the forms of the masculine impulse. By which I mean to say, as simple as it sounds, pick a form first. There are only so many forms in which you can express the involution. There are only so many forms which have been, over time, evolved. Writing, right? Speaking, painting, sculpture, architecture, dance. All, do you see these forms? There's only so many. And the forms that are on the earth and available to our consciousness at that point are there for a reason, and they are, put it to you like this, begging for your involution to evolve. So how do you go about doing this thing that I just described? Okay. When we find ourselves on a spiritual path, and this is explicitly to those who I am going to say are unequivocally very much on a spiritual path. These are not, say, people who are dabbling, right? These are people who are serious seekers who really don't just want to know, they want to know with a capital K. When you find yourself on that path, you enter a realm, and everybody is at different degrees with it, but essentially you encounter more visions than the average person. That is why people who are attracted to spirituality get labeled as dreamers and visionaries, because it's very much true. They are capable of experiencing and perceiving more visions and having more dreams than people who are not. Okay, well, we must develop so that we can select out of this realm of essentially infinite possibility which express a true spiritual reality. Those are the only ones that are going to endure. No other guarantee is possible than what I just mentioned, because if anyone were to come to me and say, or come to anybody who is an occultist or a spiritual investigator or researcher, and they were to say, okay, I have all these visions, I have all these dreams, I have all these things that I want to do, and I have all these, they're all there. So now tell me, how do I know which ones are true for me and which ones are false? How do I know that? And no genuine person who has an occult or an esoteric understanding would ever give them a rule. They would all essentially say the same thing. And they would say, if you want to learn how to discriminate between which of your visions or dreams are truly backed by a true spiritual reality, remix expression of your soul that's going to endure, you have to go on developing yourself. It's the same thing every time, y'all. Okay, that's the only way it becomes possible for you to direct your vision to what remains. You have to keep going. This is why I say, if you don't remember anything else that I have said in the last hour, remember, purpose is in what you do. Therefore, there's already a huge leg up. Pick a medium, do something, start narrowing it down. I'm like, and fucking devolve into Shia LaBeouf right now. Like, I'm like, okay. That is the way. The more that you enable yourself to become by your deeds, the more that you will, by law, fulfill your true mission. A few more things and then we're done. Almost over. I wrote these just a few minutes before because they seemed very... yeah, okay. So, all right. When you're at the stage, let's rewind for a second. When you're at the stage where you're having a lot of dreams and possibilities and visions, right? That's in anthroposophy, that's what you call the visionary stage. And what's interesting about that stage is that while you are in seeing these visions and these dreams, right? You are perceiving things that are a manifestation of the spiritual world, but these things have actually 0% value as information. And it's information that you use to create your life. So it's quite like I said, before with intro to intuition as a way of like, oh, channeling is not really a big deal. Being psychic is not really a big deal. Like, cool, you can see it. But how is it informing you? Right? But the same thing happens not just with ghosts and auras. The same thing is happening rampantly at an epidemic level. People are, once again, capping their initiation. They're getting stopped by the troll at the bridge who says, pick one, and they don't know which one to pick. They stay at the visionary stage. So what you want to do is to further develop yourself to get to another stage where things really start to happen. And that stage is called the stage of inspiration. What's interesting about when you reach this stage is that there are actually no more differences. Okay. What I mean by that is in the visionary stage, believe it or not, the visions and dreams that you have for your life, many other people are having those visions and dreams, but they're all different. They're all different. As unique as you think that your vision or your dream is, many people are having it. Essentially, they are perceiving it, but it's all different to everyone who's perceiving it. When you reach the stage of inspiration, and how do you get there? Refresher. Deeds. Do things. That is the only way you get there. Okay? Once you get there, there are no more differences. Meaning, the experiences, the visions, and the dream are the same to all who have reached this level of development. How the fuck do you think that people used to actually organize in the past? Because they all had the same vision. I could go down a rabbit hole with that. I won't, because I value your time. I will end on this. This is the last part of the lecture. If there is anything that I would give you to guide your way through this exalted explanation of what is otherwise known as trial and error, it's this: patience, please. Patience is not only a virtue, it is literally the movement of God. You've got to take your time, but you've also got to do things. You do. And don't you worry yourself about the form. There are many forms which would love to have your involution, even if it's only temporary, even if you decide, and it is revealed to you after a time, that that vision was ultimately not true for you. You still evolve those mediums. So just think of the medium first. Don't think about what you want to do with it. Think about writing, think about speaking, think about dancing, think about, different art forms first. And then observe what you do in them. Oh my God, are you okay?
Sorry, somebody literally just like shot a firecracker
Oh no.
right in the neighbor's backyard.
Oh my God, I couldn't see behind you, so I was like, I have no idea if
Oh my
is an
God.
intruder alert?
No, it was
Oh no.
sorry.
No, you're fine. So that is the lecture portion. It's called it's the laser beam. So we're gonna do that. It does not take long. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save. I'm really bad at math. Y'all gonna have to help me. 15 minutes for that at the end, but for now I want to just do discussion and Q&A because that was a lot of information.
Can we, I'm just making sure we're open with the Q&A part right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the lean into order thing? Like I got one of those pings when I heard it, so I knew I was, I was hot on the trail on something. Like that's something I need to know more about. Yeah. Can you expound on that a little bit? What has been, and maybe in the context of your personal experience with that would be great.
Yeah. I'm glad that you contextualized your question that way because there are a lot of things. I mean, there's like 8 pages front and back of notes here. There's a lot of stuff that I don't end up saying, but one of the things that I wrote in a lot of the tail ends of these paragraphs was ask me about my personal experience with this, but I didn't want you to have to keeping track of those things. So I appreciate that. That's a good way to ask questions honestly. So anyway, well, before I tell you my personal experience, I want to offer something that might make it a bit more like down to earth and simple to understand, which is that think about it again with play and children. Children, for example, they don't walk up to a paint set and sit there and think, what am I going to paint? Like once they understand the order, the mechanism, the utility, they just do what they're doing. A child doesn't walk up to a guitar thinking, what am I going to play? A child does not experience trepidation around an instrument or any one medium. You can up the age a bit and it stays the same. It's a certain kind of, self-consciousness that comes in that's perpetuated by a lot of things. But, but essentially what I mean is that a lot of this process can really be understood in almost like the human being's life cycle. Like when we get really old, we like revert back to being a child, but it's because we like shit ourselves and stuff. But it's like, what if we engaged more with the reality that time is not linear? And what if we borrowed things, for example, the wisdom of our old age and the youth and playfulness of ourselves as children, and we mediated those two? And what does that look like in real life? That means approaching established mediums with complete trust, complete curiosity, complete what's the word? Play. But it is so, I mean, you're not gonna be able to do it for like the first time that we try to do these things because it's like literally reverse aging in a way. I'm not sure if this is actually making sense, but so many of the things, like I said, if you go back, if we learned that a tree is only a tree and forgot how to know things by just what we felt when we approached them, then you have to go back the channel you came through by hammering in on the fact that it's a tree, it's a tree, it's a tree. So if you want to go back to playfulness and boundless creativity, you've got to go back through where you unlearned that, which
I was
is
just about
order.
to say that.
Yes.
It sounds like you are describing unlearning. Yeah,
Yeah.
like you're talking about, and that's interesting. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. On my own life, yeah, I completely didn't do that. Like I said, sorry, I'm doing my best. I'm on vacation. Okay. So so yeah, there's a lot. I mean, the easiest one by far would be writing. Somehow, and it's somehow, but only because of my um my spirituality, but also my understanding and how early I started with esoteric research. Was I able to, more than any other place in my life, hold on to that internal position when I approach the medium of writing? I do not think, more often than not, I approach it and it is, I don't think about what am I going to write. I have somehow kept that relationship intact, perhaps because I started it so young and I kept doing it. I kept doing it. That's the thing. And it is, I could say the same for anytime you put me in front of like some sort of percussive instrument. Not going to sit here and say I am a good drummer because that would be a lie. I am only saying that I have been able to maintain to a certain degree that same internal position. And you know how that has served me? That has served me in my writing. That has served me in my speaking, which serves me in my teaching. And not many things bring me greater joy. Do you see the multidimensional aspect of this involution, evolution dynamic? Without it even, I didn't keep, drumming even, for fun, for play, because I thought one day this is going to help me in the way that I, deliver speeches. One day this is going to, be a huge component in the piece that I write that gets nominated for best of the internet. I didn't think any of those things. But I understand something which you all now understand, which is that these mediums want to evolve. This is where I mean, that's, if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about things like the age of Aquarius and things like that. One of the hallmarks of that kind of experience on Earth is, I mean, explosion of artful expression. I mean, that's one of the reasons, one of the main motivations for this course was not even about multidimensionality. It was actually, I almost reframed the whole thing and did multiple lectures on art. That's why the other framework is called indwelling art, because that's how important art is, not just to us all, but to human beings in a very, very personal way. There is a level at which we cannot evolve without it on a personal and collective level. And we are not engaging with it nowhere near as much as we should. Because why? Because if we play more, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. My life is going to be wrecked. Have you tried it though? Yeah, have you tried it? That's the thing. Have you really taken that risk? Because until you do, you're sitting on that other side of the fence, claiming that you know what it looks like over there when you don't. And you'll never believe anybody. You'll never believe me. You know, I could say the same thing every single time that we meet for the next 7 weeks. You will never believe me until you experience it for yourself. And that was Steiner's whole thing. Soul life practice over theory. This is not meant to be theoretical. This is meant to be real. That's a long answer. You can stop me whenever.
It sounds to me like, maybe I'm like reframing this a little bit, but like, to me, that sounds like when you're talking about going back to the order, it's peeling back a bunch of practiced identifications, going back to the inception is the best word I can think of right now. My brain's a little fried, but
That's a good
like
word.
at an essence level. And it sounds to me like you're talking about being truly engaged in the direct experience.
Yes, ma'am.
It's
Yes,
like,
ma'am.
it's a direct experience. It's not like, okay, if I paint it this way, then it's going to evoke this feeling, and then I'm going to be able to sell it, and then I can buy my car.
Yes. Yeah. But
Ooh, that blue goes over there because that's where it has to be.
that analogy you just gave, think about how many people do that with how if the average person, now listen to this shit. I know this is normal, but listen to how crazy this sounds. If the average person spends 8 hours of the 12 that they're awake, that they're alive, making that stroke because it's supposed to go there because it's going to buy him a car.
Yep.
So what do you do about that? What do you do about that? And I'm not saying, that's the thing, that everybody, when you really zoom out, everybody's just doing what everybody is doing. But there are people who are suffering because they don't want to do it that way. So everybody who knows and lives that you don't have to has got to speak up. Because it does not have to be that way. But it takes a risk. And it's scary. But only temporarily. Then
Isn't it crazy?
Different risks.
The scary makes it, that's the extra tang to the sauce though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the cayenne, bro.
If
That's
only everybody had that sensibility and that perspective on it.
John, bro. That's the tang that gets you here.
Makes you feel alive. Brings out your sinuses.
That's like,
Yes.
It's reminding me of this episode of The Sopranos where Tony is in this, he's in this funk, weird, like just dissociative, just he's in walking around in this fog for like weeks. And unbeknownst to him, there are people plotting his demise. And he's fluffing himself out of a corner store with orange juice, and somebody comes up and starts shooting at him, and they slowed it down so beautiful as the orange juice exploded in his hands, and it startles him, and he snaps into action. And afterwards he's talking to his therapist about it, and she was like, oh my god, like people are shooting at you, like, you know, how are you dealing with this? He's like, man, I feel fucking great. Like, to be honest with you, I've been like in a fog this whole time, but it's situations that make you snap into attention. You know what I mean? That shit makes you like, I'm alive, man. I'm alive. I'm alive.
Isn't that it though?
Yeah, man.
Isn't that it though, really?
It's
Like,
crazy
do
how,
you want to feel alive?
yeah,
More than not. Like, really alive.
like aliveness, that's like non-negotiable. Non-negotiable.
Oh. Yeah. And how many people? Okay, right. Let's take this a step further, right? So we've got the people, like I said, who are their jobs are like analogous to this brushstroke that they think is going to win the hearts and minds of the critics, which is going to give them this money and all of this, right? So we've got those folks in various degrees who are, you know, I guess working to live, right? But then we have these other folks who are like, okay, I don't want to live like this. I know that I don't have to. I know that it's a choice. And so I've got to set out and find what I really want to do with my life. I've got to really discover who I am and what makes me happy. Right? But there are actually, the more that you look, so many things that might make you happy. Really. There are so many things that you could do. Right? So we all get there. You know? And the only way that you get out of there to the place that, you know, we're all saying you want to be, that liminal, numinous, nebulous, impossible to define place, but alive, is by doing, by deciding I'm going to do the work of some kind. Yes, that pleases me, that makes me happy, but I'm really going to do it. I'm going to prioritize it more than anything else. And when you do that, here's what I have experienced as if by magic. There were many, many iterations of something in the vein of what I do today, which has many arms and legs. And you best believe that when I first started, I really thought that I'd figured it out. And it was going to be that version of that vision, just ever more mature as I matured. And so, even though I was wrong, even though that was false, I devoted myself to doing it. And I did a lot of stuff that makes me cringe, and I did a lot of stuff that did not work. But what happened, this is the interesting part. What happened is that I really didn't, over time, have to search any more. When it was ready for me to move into a new phase or do something differently, I just knew and I moved. I didn't think to myself, what next? I didn't think to myself, but how will I didn't think to I haven't thought like that in years. That kind of consciousness has dissolved from my life because I was devoted, because I did things. So I'm not saying these things, from a purely theoretical perspective. I'm saying I would not be speaking to you today if I could not sit here and look at you, kinda, and tell you that I lived it, that I am living it. It is only becoming more true and more wondrous, actually. Not to say that there's never any bad days or I don't ever have pain, none of that. None of that. But my pain is much more interesting and it does not last as long. And I don't care. I don't care. That I'm going to say that because that has been my experience. That has been my experience. And I think that that is too a natural consequence. But when you go seeking those things as a goal, it's like trying to grab that little light projection thing at this place in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, where you could stick your eye into this box and it said that you would see a man eating chicken, but you just saw a fat man eating a turkey leg. Sorry. Okay.
That just took the weirdest left turn
Sorry.
ever. Okay. Like I wasn't prepared.
You can't grab it.
Whoa,
That was
whoa,
the message.
whoa.
It's an illusion. It'll never be real. That was the point. Yeah, that was the point. All right. I think, does anybody else have any questions before we do this laser beam exercise? There we go. I'll call it an exercise.
I'm sort of like, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's all right. You're already going.
Mine's like a loose question. So, because like this whole discussion, I can like so many things, but anyways, so like
All the things.
just like things I've heard last week that like tie into this, like, so I'm gonna try to keep this short. Do you think that, because you were saying like these different sort of, I forgot how you put it, but like I don't know, stages. Do you think for a person they could not time it like trying to predict it, like, okay, this is what's coming next, but more in like a life cycle kind of way? Like you're in a space and you seem us over time of just, this is part of it, I guess, just being older and going, oh, like I didn't know what this cycle, I didn't even notice the cycle. And then you're like, okay, now I notice the cycle. Now I'm like, and I guess I can speak to myself, I guess that's why I'm asking. And then you're like, oh, now that I notice the cycles, they seem to have this like time frame, which is interesting. Like they seem to happen in this time, this amount of time. And I'm not trying to will it in any direction, but it's more of like this very interesting like notion. So I don't know. I was just wondering if that feels like, I don't know, still too much trying to like, in the sense like controlling the process sort of thing, or is it can just be like a synchronistic kind of observation, or your experience, I guess, even around that at all, even?
That makes perfect sense. I mean, like, first of all, the idea that when we evolve, which if you're here, you're evolving, you know, um, congratulations. But when we evolve, it's not a line like we talked about before. And so it's inevitable that, and I'll borrow Q's terminology here that she used in our session before. Set point. It's a really great way. So I'll use her word here. It's inevitable that, as we evolve, that we come into contact with a previous set point. And a lot of times what happens, so if, we're looking at it like a spiral, and you're like, oh man, I made it to that next rung. Holy shit. I'm looking old me right dead in the face. Not literally, but energetically. And so what happens, I think a lot of time, just as a side note, because it might be, conducive to your question, I'm not sure, but just in case, a lot of times what happens is when we become aware that that's happening, and we can even go so far, like yourself, as to recognize a time frame, which is not a bad thing at all. That's a wonderful thing. When that happens, then we're like, oh, I'm recognizing I'm coming up on this, 3-year mark again. When that's going to happen, and you're going to be interacting with you from a previous set point who has not evolved to the point that you're up to now. One thing is to make damn sure that when you start noticing these old ways of thinking or behaving happening, or experiences, circumstances that are like, when will this ever stop? Like the mice, that you're not looking to what you have recently been doing for answers. Don't think, so many people are like, oh, I'm slipping up, and they look back at what they did last week or a month, not having the understanding that it's just like you're saying, it's just clockwork. It's just that time for you to reinforce, to stand your ground. But it doesn't mean that you should look back at who you've been being recently with censure or punishment or criticism, harsh criticism. I think that's a mistake that so many people in that second category from earlier are making. But when it comes to these, the stages, the visionary stage and the inspiration stage, that's a really, really interesting question that you said in terms of looking at things that way. I'm going to give like an off the cuff answer real quick, but then I'm also going to take some time and I'm really going to think about it, and I'm going to put it in the Telegram as a voice note, because I've never thought about that before. But off the top of my head, to me, I would say that it would naturally follow, because it is the nature of a human being's life to mature every year. Every year we get older. When we finish our 20s, we have to learn all over again what it means to be 30, And so I think that there is definitely something to be said about the fact that if you're noticing a cycle, for example, that works in threes, that when you are, you're not in year 1 or year 2, you're in year 3 when you're expected from the previous one. If I had to speak around that in any way, I would say this, just because we're short on time. I would say use that year to do as much as possible to shift yourself into the inspiration phase of development as opposed to the visionary phase, because that is an indication when you're in that year that you have matured. And that's really what that phase is about. And on the earth, I would lean in heavily to networking. I would really lean in to the world, which would require you, of course, to have the courage to speak about your visions, because that is an action when done correctly. Speak about them. Does that in any way answer your question?
Yes, it
Okay.
does. The 3 years, because that's so like on point. But set point is perfect, because that's like the perfect word for it, because it's not.
Yes.
I think that's the recognition point. It's like that's when I'm like, and all of a sudden this time around I was like, oh, I'm like, this, it's not familiar at all, but there's like yeah, it's a set point. It's just like, oh, okay.
That's when
Which is
Q
super
said that.
interesting.
I've
Yeah,
never
I'm like,
forgotten that. I mean, it's just brilliant.
yeah, it really is. So yeah, it does. Time
Yay.
is sort of like, I don't know, an interesting thing to me, and not paying attention to it, but then there are
Girl.
patterns. So
Same.
oh yeah, that was perfect.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's wild that we were just talking about that, because I've been like deeply in the patterns right now and recognizing them. And it's been actually kind of scary. It's kind of like that cayenne pepper. I'm like, holy fuck. This is like, at a point you can't deny that there is a divine timing and order and divine intervention in ways. And it's nuts, but this conversation has been so potent and illuminating, and I also feel like I have like 3 grades of amnesia, because it was like so much, but brilliant.
You'll get used to it, and like that's the Naoka effect. I'm gonna tell you, as a veteran, that like that happens. You'll be, because like sometimes I'll be like, what in the fuck were we just? And
What did I just do for an hour?
and it'll come back to you in waves. I promise. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that has been true since the last transition. So my question was actually just about playfulness, and I was so much in that energy yesterday, and that's what felt so fucking good, and like really brought out, just aspects that I loved and haven't felt in a long time, that were missing in relationship, just in others in general. But so in terms of order, you said wake up and say things like, I am opening my eyes, and like, I am putting my feet on the ground. Do you have anything that could start sparking our imaginations to incorporate play in a similar way? Just to become more aware of opportunities for it, I suppose, or like how to actually inject it, which I know will all be our own unique and personal thing. But yeah.
What a wonderful question. Man, when I do this, I'll tell you what, when I do this thing the second time around, there's going to be a whole section on that, what comes from
Love
that.
that.
That's a
I'm glad
great
I asked,
question.
because I was like,
That's a really good question.
I don't know how to play. Like,
see, this shit helps me learn what I missed. I love it. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Oh my God, there's so many. This is another one. Hold on one second. I need to actually make a note of these things for the Telegram, because I want us to use that. It's a way for us to, it makes it more real when it doesn't feel like you're getting the amnesia, because it's all like,
right.
But I want to make sure I don't forget these real quick. So just bear with me for a second. Oh my God, I'm an idiot. I could just replay it. Okay, I did record this. Anyway, I don't need to write this. Whoa. Okay. So, oh man. Okay. There's so many. Okay. So to piggyback off of the what I was talking before, when you're waking up and you're just saying the bare bones of the thing, it's very almost robotic in a way, right? The same thing, and this is tried and true. I'm just coming for what I've done to introduce this. So for example, when I'm going to shift into a really heavy workload, when I was working on this course, and I didn't want it to feel like work because I knew I would get overwhelmed. What I would do is, I did all of the very rudimentary basic things. I would make sure I had snacks or a nice wine, or I'd have all the physical things around it enticed me, right? And atmosphere was always very important to me, like setting an atmosphere that was conducive to that.
Right.
But sometimes I would literally do things, and I guess in a larger sense, the spontaneity of it, it's almost like a performed spontaneity, as paradoxical as that sounds. So I'd literally be typing something, and like I would just thought, like I wouldn't think about it, but if I was typing, I'd be like in the middle of it, I'd just be like H, 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 H. Like I would just start doing dumb shit. Basically, I'm doing dumb shit. That's what I'm doing. I'm just like breaking up, or because you have the replay, an intro to intuition is a way of life. Q asked me in one of those lectures, I don't remember which one, but she asked me about journaling, and she was like, can you talk to me about your personal experience on journaling? What do I write? Da, 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 da. And I talked about this backdoor approach by essentially do the thing that do the opposite of what you think that you should do. So think about what you have in your think tank. Maybe jot it down just for a reference of, this is what I recognize as I'm going to be playful, or I'm going to play. Whatever those things are, start experimenting with doing the opposite of them. Like like I said, with the journaling thing, I would be like, I'm supposed to start with the word I. I'd be like, hell no, I'm gonna start with curtain. Like, just, you gotta, curtain, and I'm going, and I'm gone. You've got to trip the sensor, Trish. That's what I'm saying. Like, you've got to trip that sensor, because when you do, you will just observe yourself doing something immediately after. You know what I'm saying?
Pattern interrupt, yeah.
Pattern interrupt, yes. This is why I need you guys. You have the words. I need your words. Yes. Is that helpful? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
least
very
for now.
helpful. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to experiment with that for sure. And it's also really helpful in the context of journaling, because I'm always like, I know I should be doing that.
Yeah, because it's not fun anymore, because you're like,
yeah,
today.
yeah. And
Well, it's
I
just
love that we
boring.
were talking about like essentially, choosing livelihood and vitality and ways that we choose and honor life earlier, because I was literally having this conversation with a friend yesterday, which I need to talk with Q about when I was almost shot last year. And I was like, that's something for the medium of writing that I've really been wanting to put out there, but I think the conversation yesterday was very, very opening in that way, and very empowering. And I was telling him, he was like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I was like, I'm so glad it happened to me. It is the most empowering experience of my life. And I was like, I chose life, and I have a souvenir of it. And it's, I don't even know. It's the only time that I've ever said, and I've told Q this before, but I am so glad that I'm me. And that was such a switch. And so I'm wanting to get back into that. So yeah, really glad that we had this discussion, and it's opening up a lot.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that I'm me. I'm tearing up right now. I'm such a softie.
Oh, I cried when I had that.
I love
I
that.
literally was like,
Yeah,
I'm glad that you're you too.
What an act of
Yes.
love. Like, what a
Yes.
fucking pure, profound act of love to say such a thing. But even the impulse before you even say it, to want to say that, to recognize that is just, that's some good shit.
It
Good
is.
shit, my friend. That's some good shit.
All right, listen, guys. We're gonna look forward to the laser beam next time. Okay. I would go over, but like I said, I'm on vacation, so I should enjoy it.
I
Right.
still have
You
stuff to
know?
do after I get off this call, so that is perfect
Yes.
for me.
That's a wonderful. We'll look
Yeah,
forward to
I gotta
that.
get to dinner.
Yes. Go out and live. All
Yeah.
right.
Yes, go do it.
Yes. All right. I
On
love you guys.
Good night,
Thank you.
ladies.
Yeah, so
No.
good.
Nayoka, this whole time I've just been looking at your skin like, holy fuck, it is so clear and radiant and beautiful. And I just wanted to let you know.
Oh, girl,
Yeah,
it's
that vacation is doing right by you, honey.
Yeah.
Zoom filter. No, my skin is like better than like no, it is the filter. But it's been getting better. I appreciate
Y'all
that.
stupid.
It's a little bit real. It's a little bit not real. I'll take the compliment either way. I appreciate it,
Take it.
darling. I'll take it.
Good night, y'all.
That's so
Bye,
funny.
y'all. I
Bye.
love you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.